So let's jump right into it, man. I know a lot of investors these days are just really there's some alarm going on. A lot of people have bridge debt or value add deals. We're seeing capital calls, rumors of capital calls. We've got a capital call or two going on. And so what are we seeing right now in multifamily? And I know you've been through 25 years of this. Like, how are you looking at what's happening right now?
It's not a great time for folks if they bought in the last few years, for sure. But what I mean is if you just fast forward and see how competitive it was, the sellers were getting millions of dollars up front before even step on the property and due diligence. You start to look at how many people were bidding on these projects. And what happens in a normal balanced market is there needs to be a little push-pull between buyer and seller. And what happened is the buyers in the last couple of years were at a massive disadvantage and kind of had to stretch for pricing and stretch for terms, and they were shortening their due diligence periods and all those kinds of things. And so it was all coming. And so what this is doing, in my opinion, is it's an adjustment for the sellers. And I think that gets lost in cash calls and all that stuff. It's all true that as well, but we needed the sellers to adjust their expectations. We needed the brokers to adjust their expectations. What was happening, people were stretching for deals. And in many cases, many of those deals are the ones that are in trouble. So the market, in my opinion, was not in balance. It's unusually similar to what was happening with the single family market. Same thing. When you have 10, 20, 30 people bidding on houses, showing up, and the prices were jumping, it's not a healthy market. It's healthy for a seller, but not healthy for a buyer.
Right.
So I believe that's why I say it's about time.
Right.
So the unfortunate part, of course, about that is that as that starts to unwind itself, there's pain for many people that have bought, and for all kinds of reasons. But as the tide goes out, and those of us who are in the business for the long haul, it's actually better.
Right.
Because prices are adjusting, cap rates are going up, interest rates are up, expenses are up, all of those things are happening. Well, it's just the pendulum swinging the other way. And for somebody who's been in it 22 years now, actually longer than my current company's 22 years, it's a welcome time.
Yeah.
Because we're bidding on stuff still, but with, we're putting longer due diligence times on them. We're not doing non-refundable day one.
Right.
We're able to negotiate with sellers while we're in escrow. And that all goes away when you have $1 million hard on day one. If you find a roof or you find problems inside of due diligence, then, the seller, they're like, well, we don't care. We need you to close anyway. You have $1 million up or $500,000 up or $250,000 up or whatever it is. So I think the playing field is starting to flatten again, and it's actually going to be good for the industry if people can get through this short-term pain.
Right. Yeah, no, we're seeing it, and I think as an investor, I know we have a lot of passive investors in the audience here, and just wondering, hey, what do I do? Or if I talked to one investor, and he said, I've got 5 capital calls going on right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of challenge, but it's really counterintuitive. A lot of times it's the idea of being fearful when others are greedy and being greedy when others are fearful, as Warren Buffett would say. Of like, and even I think we were talking about a panel recently, and somebody was talking about the playing defense and offense at the same time, so defensively taking care of what you have, as well as going after some of these new deals. So do you think that we're actually, with the cap rate expansion, we're actually seeing some pretty, some better deals now, or we're not quite there yet?
Oh, we're not quite there. We're starting to, I think, there's a lag effect with interest rates. There's a lag effect with cap rates. There's a lag effect with sellers and brokers and all that. And so I think that analogy of that we're playing defense and offense is a good analogy. And by the way, I actually believe that you should be at all times. Like you should always be playing a little bit of offense. Sometimes you're playing more offense. And sometimes I think a lot of people right now are playing maybe a little more defense. But the worst thing that you can do is kind of bury your head in the sand. And if you're in this business for the long haul, I think that there needs to be a good little balance there. From our standpoint, what's gotten us through, what's gotten our investors, to trust us over a long period of time, is full transparency. We've seen some of these articles come out in the news. Now, of course, we all know news can be a little slanted,
Really?
but it does stand to reason if somebody's in that kind of trouble. How are they managing that? And did they have they been talking with their lenders? Have they been talking to their investors? What are they doing on the management side? Because for the last 22 years, the market has not gone up. So I've seen it go up, I've seen it go down multiple times, and so there are strategies for all of those things. And I think again, when there's been a tremendous amount of focus on influencers raising money online. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. However, if that's their only skill, then they have a problem. And if the investors invested in those people, then that's an LP problem. So when stuff like this happens, and it will happen again, you start to look at experience and wisdom and how deep your bench is, your capital reserves, and all those things. And somebody who's been in the business a while is way ahead of these things. They are way ahead of these things. So I think that's what's showing up now.
Yeah.
A lot of these influencers, they don't know how to manage property. They don't know how to manage a property management company. And so what's going to happen in the next year is all these management companies a lot of them are going to get fired. They're going to first blame the management company. And then they're going to replace it one or two times. And then they're going to take it in-house. And they're just kicking the can down the road. And maybe it works, but if they don't know how to manage the manager, that puts them at a huge disadvantage. If they don't know how to manage lenders and do these loan mods and things like that, loan modifications, well, then that's a problem. If they don't know if their operating agreements aren't written correctly and they're not following the protocols of whether they're loans or whether they're bringing in additional equity or preferred equity and squeezing people down and all that stuff, because all that's happening. I just wonder how much of that is happening that the LPs know about.
Right.
And so that's all going to expose itself. It'll turn itself into lawsuits. There'll be lawsuits for sure.
Sure.
And people will say, well, it's not what the business plan said. And then the SEC will start digging into that. So all that's coming. And so those are all things that somebody that's an online influencer that knows how to raise money and brought somebody in and they're partnering don't get. And so, do I want all that to happen? Do I want all those people to be dragged through the mud? Of course not. It's all going to depend on that transparency and how they're managing all this stuff.
Right. No, that's a really good lesson. I think, if you own multifamily between 2010 and basically 21, 22, it's kind of like, owning it really made you a genius, right? Because you were in the right, the rates are coming down, things are looking good. But as rates have come up, we've seen it in valuations, right? So we're seeing value add deals that are significantly, higher value. I give you, I'm sure you see a lot of examples where you do all these renovations and now the property is valued significantly less even after the renovations because of the debt somebody has to get to come in to buy the property. So it's interesting. What do you think about, I know we've talked a lot about this over the last couple of years, but your opinion on the Fed with rates, especially coming into an election year? Like, what do you think? How is it going to play out? Is it going to be a crisis? Like, what are some kind of possibilities you see?
I actually read the Fed minutes, so which is, for anybody who knows my upbringing in my school, they would not believe me, but I actually have been, and they're fascinating. And the reason I do it is there's this thing called the dot plot, and the dot plot is quite simply how is each Fed chairman voting, and where do they think they're voting. I think that that's a really interesting indicator. So, you find that most of them are grouped in some kind of average, and some are, you got a couple that are high and a couple that are low. Says we need to raise rates, and they got others that say we need to, lower rates, and you got everybody kind of in the middle. So that's a really interesting thing. So if, for everyone that's listening here, I would dig into dot plot. You go back and look at what Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, he actually hasn't moved from his positions. So, like, if you just go look now, what's interesting, like all media, they take what he said and then they try to guess, and then it comes out as a news article. But if you really take a look at, sometimes people are just rewriting news articles, and so you've got these journalists that, in my opinion, are not doing a very good job, and but they've said all along that they are trying to get inflation to 2, period.
Right.
They've never wavered off of that. Still, even though there's been all kinds of articles around that, you look at them, they've never said we might consider something more than 2. They talk about a neutral rate, but that's different. So I think that, there's still a problem with inflation.
Yeah.
Period.
Because it's not actually 3%, like they say, right?
Correct.
It could be much higher.
Correct. Right. So I don't know about you guys, but gas is $5-6 a gallon. Rents are going up, albeit not as fast as they were, which is what the media is saying, but we're not seeing a decline in rent. House prices are going up. Mortgage payments are going up. Food costs are going up. So, all right. So you start to look at that. Shelter is one of the biggest pieces. Okay. They've been trying to cave the real estate market. Make no mistake about it. Shelter, I think, represents in the 40% range of the CPI. So, okay. So if you have a category like that, that represents that much of the CPI, and it's still moving, I don't see rates going down. So my crystal ball says, that they're either going to stay about where they are. They could potentially even go up a little bit, depending on those categories. Because again, going back to what the Fed's trying to do, they're trying to bring that inflation rate to 2. It actually went up over the last 2 months, the inflation rate, the CPI. So, okay, so CPI is going the wrong way after 11 rate increases. So for all of you that are hanging on this, rates are going to go down, I would just ask you, why do you think that? Because everything I read, everything I see doesn't appear that the Fed would do that. And if they do, what are they going to go down to? 5? Like, it's not going to help. We're talking, what they need to go down to is they punched all the way past from 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Now they're approaching 7. So think how far they have to go. So even if they say, yes, we're going to reduce rates, they're going to do it at what, a quarter point, half a point,
very slowly
over time.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe if you're lucky, that could be a point in a year. Okay, so great. So now we're in the 6s again, or 5.5s or whatever.
Right.
So, you have to put things in perspective. They're not going to go from 6, 7% rates, or even 8 for single family in some cases. And hard money's way over. What they're going to do, they're not going to jump down to 3, and so all your deals work. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's like if you're an operator, you're just hoping. You're not hoping.
Of course,
if rates just come down, we still will be okay.
Right.
But, so let me ask you a question. For some of these deals that investors are in, LPs are in, or GPs operating deals, there gets to be a challenge, especially with bridge and multifamily bridge debt or anything value add or even construction, to work through a modification or to go to a lender. I know some lenders will say, like, hey, you got to make this payment, and until you're short on the payment, say, here's 80% of the amount, and you're saying this is what we've got to pay, then they may work out something with you. But how have you walked through that process before?
Yeah.
Or what do you see as kind of?
Well, we aren't.
I mean, not currently,
company, but I've been through similar, back in the 08 range, here's the truth. Like, the lender does not want the property back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a fact. They're not, what they're supposed to create the resistance back to the sponsor, right? So when the agreements come out, all that stuff's clear. But at the end of the day, the foreclosure process, the default process, and all that kind of stuff, it's legal. It's, and at the end of the day, what they are going to have to do is take that and then package it up with some broker somewhere, right? And take a write down from somebody like us that's going to buy that at a deep discount.
Right.
Okay. So, they
don't want to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, it's a poker game, and unfortunately, they have a straight flush, and you have, an offsuit,
you got a pair of nines.
That's it. So, but it's a dance. It's part of the dance. And what's going to save people right now is cash.
Mm.
So, what the way to do it is to go find that cash.
Mm.
And if there's value in the real estate. So that's the first thing I always say. So what happens is there's kind of an ego involved. There's an emotional attachment involved. There's LP money or maybe your money or whatever. There's all of that to consider. But if people can hold these deals for the long term, they're going to be fine. And I'll give you a couple examples.
Yeah.
So in 05, 06, I bought some stuff in Austin, Texas. In 07 or 08, I looked like an idiot, right? My equity was less than than the property was, or my loan was more than the property was worth. What saved me was occupancy and cash flow. So what happens is people buy things for cash flow, or they buy things for capital gain, but you should be buying them for both. So a lot of people were saying, oh, there's little or no cash flow or negative cash flow on day one. And they're waiting on this big value add.
Right.
Okay. And so there's no cash flow, so they're running out of cash. So the strategy started at the buy. Everything we do, cash flows day one. And so in that scenario, all I had to do was focus on management. How do I keep this place full? How do I manage my expenses? I had fixed rate debt at the time, which was obviously, which not a lot of people have right now, or some do, some don't. So I just wrote it through, and then lo and behold, by let's say 8, probably 9, 10, 11, I was right back to where it was, and then it punched through.
Right.
And so so you got to think long term. So if you can get enough cash today, then and you've got a really good asset and you've got equity, then you should be preserving the equity, preserving your investors, preserving the LPs, and trying to figure out, how to do that first, and then work through it. So you need cash first. You need to show the lender that you've got a plan. Again, the lenders don't want these assets back because them having them back is a pain in their butt.
Right.
Right. So cash, then loan mod, long-term hold. Yes, it's different from what the business plan said, but if you're trying to preserve the investor LP money, and the asset's worth it, then it's worth it. It's just time will heal this. The next 18 to 24 months is going to be rough, but if you go 30,000 feet, there's a massive shortage of housing.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to be, everything, there's a lot of new construction, all that stuff. That's all going to be gone by, let's say, 2025. And we're going to have massive rent growth again in 26, 27, 28, because nobody's building, and all that new supply, there's a lag in that too. So if you can just get through the next couple of years, right, that's going to require money, and you're going to have to do all kinds of creative stuff. And this is when you learn, right? Going through this, as painful as it is, that's where all the lessons are. There's no lessons at all, hardly, when you're an influencer raising money and things are going up and you're trading it out and you're buying new crap, right?
Right.
Zero lessons. Actually, they're all bad lessons. So this is the time where the lessons, you can absolutely preserve the asset. You can preserve the LP equity. You can preserve your relationship with your lenders. Right now, you can do it. And, if you bought it right, and if the asset is worth, the loan, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a different path.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great, Ken. I know with your experience, you've seen a lot of things. So I guess for investors, we have a few more minutes to kind of get into this, and would love to take some questions. Obviously, this isn't live, but we can pass on some of this. But what would you? I guess a couple questions around just indicators, things you look for. Like what's some data that you look at now, or even when you're looking, you mentioned asset management. You're looking at an asset manager. What are some things that you're looking at? So I guess there's kind of two different questions, just general and as well as in that when you.
Well, the first thing, I always look at what's within your control.
Right.
So one of the things I've started to do is really, really dial in on my operations. Now, I have a massive advantage because I started in property management right out of college. So for the first 10 years of my life, I managed 20, 30,000 units. So when I step on a project, I know, I have a checklist in my mind that I've been through 100 times. And so the first thing I've done is I'm scrubbing each one of my assets. Now, I want to make sure that my expenses are completely in order. Everything's been bid out multiple times, and that my market rents are exactly where they should be, and that I have the right teams in place. I'm maximizing my revenue, my other income, and my expenses. That's the first thing. That requires a fair amount of work, obviously, because there's so many line items and so many things. That's super important, because no matter what, that is going to determine your next loan, your next investor. Like, they're going to look at the operations, right? So, like, I looked at a building yesterday, actually, a new construction, brand new, in lease up. It's stagnated at 60%.
Wow.
Okay.
In Phoenix, or?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. That's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? Because they got to take a haircut. They're trying to get through lease up. So, so there's a strategy around that. And because I'm strong in operations, I know already I can bring my own team in there, top it up, and make the deal work.
Right.
So when you have that kind of confidence from the operations, it gives you a lot of power.
Right.
That's the first thing. Those are controllables. Those are things that you can do now. The second thing is you got to dig into your partnership agreement with your LP equity and your prefs and, all that type of stuff. And you need to take a look at your stress points there, right? And I think that's super important. And then you can start to bring in, other sources to kind of top it up, whether that's asset management, it could be family office, could be institutional, it could be a number of things. You can give up GP equity, you can bring in more LP equity, you can come in with a loan. All that should be fully transparent to your existing deal.
Right.
It has to be, right?
Yeah.
You can't just change stuff and then tell them later. So, all that stuff, you got to paper up, make sure it's all correct. That's the area I think that people are going to be in trouble on, thinking, oh, this is going to be short term. I'm only going to need this for 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, whatever. Well, if they're right, they're probably going to be okay. But if they're not, people are going to wonder how they got squeezed down. So that's the next piece. The other thing is you need to go out and get other opinions, brokers' opinions of values. People are doing that all over the place.
Yeah.
So brokers aren't listing deals right now. They're actually giving everybody these DOVs or brokers' opinions of value.
Yeah.
That's really important because that kind of substantiates, what the thing's worth. Then you got to look at your debt, right? And see how much equity you have. And if you have equity, and hopefully you have equity, even if it's half or 2/3 or 1/3 or what it was, that's still okay. You're in the money, right?
Yeah.
You're preserving that little bit. Now, it doesn't really matter today because you're not selling. If you're selling today, that's exactly what would happen. You're playing the long game here, right? So you need to have all that information, and then you can go out and make good decisions on the asset, preserving the equity. I've been in a situation where we bought stuff and the equity's gone down. Probably everyone has, in something, a car, a house, whatever. Like, things depreciate, things go down in value, right? But over the long haul, especially with this inflation, I think, you're on the right side of it, believe it or not, even though it might be feeling a little bit of pain. But I want to be in hard assets during high inflationary times, because we all know you can't build a home affordably right now. You can't build apartments affordably right now. Okay, so if you own them, you're actually in that category, right?
Yeah,
like,
better shape. That's
good. I mean, even though it might not feel good, but so, if you can hold on to it, I truly believe that, real estate is going to really, really skyrocket here based on all these crazy things that are going on, globally, really.
Yeah, it's not getting cheaper to do anything. We all see it, and it's really true. Ken, I know we're short on time today, and I'm sorry you weren't able to be with us in person, but I thought this was an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
So much value you bring, just your perspective, your wisdom, your experience. Thank you for hosting me in here today. I feel like hopefully all of you feel like you came into the studio as well. It's a very nice studio, but I know you're going to be around next year for the conference as well.
I will be. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to plan around a schedule. We're going to call Robert Kiyosaki and tell him.
I know. Yeah, no, I appreciate you flying in from LA, guys. That's what Bronson did, just to make sure that, we delivered. I want to make sure we delivered on the promise. So, out live.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ken. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks, man.
Great seeing you, man.
Thanks a lot. Okay.